Today on Locked On Canadiens, John Cooper said it best. When his country needed a goal, Nick Suzuki stood up.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports us here on the show and ensures you don't miss an episode. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as that Maybe It's Ian. I'm joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. And we have another Nick Suzuki defender joining us today. One Andrew Berkshire, the head honcho over at the Game Over Network. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Maybe not as well as Nick Suzuki, though.
Yeah, he has to feel just so good after that, huh? I mean, you know, as much as we'd been pumping his tires about how well like the underlying numbers looked and how well he was playing his role of just being a guy lower in the lineup to move the puck in a positive direction. You know, I think Nick Suzuki probably expected more out of this situation, and he delivered in Canada's win over Czechia, sending them to the semifinal against Finland. So look, we're going to jump into all of this. We'll cover that game against Czechia, Suzuki keeping Canada alive in the dying minutes of the third period. We'll look at Slavkovsky, who moves on with Slovakia. Slovakia will play for a medal for the second time in Juraj Slavkovsky's Olympic career. And then Andrew's been working on something. It's been posted over at Habs Eyes on the Prize about officiating, specifically in the Atlantic Division, and how uneven it is. And I really want to talk about that because I think it just goes to show a lot of the things that we kind of think are true about NHL officiating, but it puts data to those thoughts. So let's start with Canada's effort against Czechia. They're down by a goal that should not have counted, if we're being honest. Czechia had 6 guys on the ice for the totality of the play developing from when Thomas Harley had it on his stick to when the puck ended up in the back of Canada's net. The play was ineligible for play. It should not have happened. But it didn't matter. Nick Suzuki, the end of his shift, he forces the puck down low. He knows that Stone and Marner are off. He's playing with them now because Sidney Crosby's hurt. He works the puck down low. He wins a battle. He manages to hand the puck off to Seth Jarvis and then makes everybody on the ice forget he exists as he stands in front of the net and deflects the tying goal between Lucas Dostal's legs. Laura, I want to start with you as our resident. I say this affectionately, our resident Team Canada overreactor. I think I want to hear from you what was going through your mind when that happened.
I don't know what you're talking about. I never doubted this team for a second. I was never freaking out about this game. I was 100. No. All right, listen. I have to say something. Like we talked about it yesterday. We said that Canada has to take Czechia seriously. And I feel like Czechia, the one really good thing that they did was they were really able to understand their opportunity. And they were really, really able to kind of put their best forward despite being outmatched talent-wise. Like that is what I am going to say. They also did take advantage of Jordan Binnington, but I don't want to focus on Jordan Binnington today. That is a story for another day because it's all good today. I do want to say, like, losing Sidney Crosby, I thought it could go one of two ways. It was either going to be the entire team gets deflated or they rally for their captain because this is not how they want his Olympics career to end. But at the end of the day, it was, I think, Nick Suzuki just understood the moment. He understood the moment. And I know, Ian, you pointed this out. After Sidney Crosby was out, they were constantly playing Nick Suzuki, cycling him through what you said, every 3 shifts. It was constant, right?
Yep.
He's like, this is why they call him a Swiss Army knife. He can do anything and he understands the assignment. I also want to say this is a very professional podcast, but I do want to say that not just if you hate Nick Suzuki, that's not enough. If you don't understand the value of Nick Suzuki and you don't love him enough, I hope that for the rest of your life, every time you go to a public bathroom, you realize they're out of toilet paper when it's too late. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's fair. To all tyrants thus, as I would say. Andrew, what did you think about that game and specifically the Suzuki capstone, the Canadian heritage moment, as it were, that Nick Suzuki created?
Yeah, I feel like if you're surprised, you're not paying attention. And I would go so far as to say that if you don't respect Nick Suzuki as one of the premier players in the league, you just shouldn't be taken seriously for your hockey opinions. Like you just shouldn't. He's so obvious at this point, at this stage. He's so undeniable. Like that whole shift with Nick Suzuki, where he controlled the play from beginning and then got lost in coverage and found the tip. It was like is vintage Nick Suzuki, and he is just inevitable in those moments. Like nobody should be surprised if you watch the Canadiens this year at all that Nick Suzuki would engineer a comeback. He just does it.
No,
What he
no,
does.
and usually there's another guy wearing 13 standing next to him ready to put the game winner in, right? Like it's sort of funny how that always Suzuki's one of the ones that's always bringing them back, and Caulfield's always the one putting it in to end it in overtime. Mitch Marner wins it in overtime in a very funny sort of. We're making a very specific fan base mad with how this game ended, and that's cool. That's really great that all of them are mad, die mad. I had a great time. Now, should we filter some of this into? Should we be concerned about Canada's effort in this game, given that they're about to play Finland, a team of mostly NHL players? Laura, I'll start with you. Like looking at Finland, are you concerned about what we're looking at from Canada?
Not anymore, because I think that they learned their lesson. Like I do, for all of his Jordan Binnington starting, I do trust John Cooper with a lot of things, and I do feel that this is something where they're going to understand the assignment, which I don't think they did against Czechia. Like the first game against them was too easy, and I really just think that they thought it was going to be a cakewalk. And I also think that they were guilty of like looking to the next round as opposed to looking to the opponent in front of them. I don't think like a lot of what I saw in the game, and admittedly I didn't watch the entire game. I watched mostly like a game in 60 version of it. A lot of what I saw was them being caught unawares or being surprised, right? Like just not feeling like they not like I know they understand the moment. This is Team Canada, but they didn't live up to it.
Yeah. Andrew, what about you? Are you worried about this team going into their semifinal matchup against Finland? Winner goes to the gold medal game.
I am, and I've been worried since game one when they decided who was going to be the starting goaltender, and the shutout that was not really a measure of anything real. But I think that when those things happen, I think hockey is one of those sports where I have so little belief in like the movers and shakers behind the scenes that when something will like calcify a bad decision, I'm like, well, that's it. And even with how Binnington was kind of shaky in this one, and I thought objectively terrible against France, I don't think there's any way that they go with Logan Thompson going forward because they're stuck now. And this is why I was worried about it from the beginning, is as soon as you make this decision that like, oh, he's our guy, and then you have a good first game, now they're stuck because they're getting to the point now where it's an elimination game. Like, oh, well, now we're going to make up this thing where we can't trust Thompson because he's not warmed up. Like he's out of it, right? It's done. Yeah. I hate it. That's what I'm worried about. And that and Tom Wilson, because again, today, taking dumb penalties, as soon as like they were down a goal and Tom Wilson took a dumb penalty, I was like, it's all the things that were incredibly predictable happening all at the same time.
Well, and the Wilson penalty to me was, a lot of people not understanding the role that Nick Suzuki plays on this team. Nick Suzuki was deployed for a defensive zone faceoff, and he wins that draw. And he executes a zone exit, and on the way out, he changes, and the top line comes on, and they are immediately rewarded with Tom Wilson taking a stupid stick penalty. Like a lot of like people don't follow up on plays like that. We have a very like TikTok mindset when we look at plays. Like if it hasn't happened in the 30 seconds that are going to play in this video, it didn't matter in the grand scheme of that play. Like Nick Suzuki won that draw and got them out of the zone. I look at the penalty kill where the Czechia ended up scoring on that penalty, on that power play. Suzuki's out there first. He wins the draw. They clear it. He does a good job getting in lanes. He shuts people down. Bo Horvat steps on. He loses both of his draws. The first draw, they hit a post. The second draw, they score. Like it was not, it's amazing just how you take Suzuki out of these plays. Bad stuff is happening. Speaking of that, the last thing I want to mention on this before moving on, I think they have a great shot against Finland. They don't if Nathan MacKinnon continues to play like he has at 5-on-5. And they've now cycled.
Crosby's hurt.
Especially if Crosby can't go, right? Like they need him to be ready to go. They need him to play the Nathan MacKinnon who skates like he's angry at the ground. and he has not been that guy all tournament at 5-on-5. Power play, I mean, he acts like he's playing for the Stanley Cup on every power play, which is great. You need to score on those opportunities when you get them. But they've now cycled, before they moved him back to the top line with the nuclear option, they cycled like 4 different wingers on that wing, and it hasn't worked. Like, so what, like, I joke about this on the show all the time. How many bad roommates do you have to have before you're the bad roommate? Like, it's not Seth Jarvis's fault too. It's not Brendan Hagel's fault too. Like, there's one common denominator in this, and it's that Nate has not been very good at 5-on-5. Now, he's incredible. I don't doubt that he can flip a switch and just be that guy again. So
Definitely.
look, we'll leave Team Canada there. We come back. We have Slovakia. We have Slavkovsky playing for the second medal in his Olympic career. And I want to talk about how potentially Slovakia can beat Team USA in that semifinal. And we'll get into that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. Look, we talk about it all the time on this show. If I'm going to any kind of game, any kind of event, I'm going through Game Time. I've gotten Laura and I Canadiens tickets going through Game Time. In fact, we're going again this year. So I went through Game Time. I love being able to see the all-in price up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Being able to see the view from our seat allows us all to agree on what tickets we're buying so we get the best value. There's great last-minute options too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com. All right, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day. And look, Olympic hockey's here, and we set up an Olympics group chat in the Everydayer Club Discord server, so you can go watch along with other hockey fans. Members also get Locked On Canadiens ad-free. Join now at lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com, or go to the show notes and you'll find the link down there. All right, Juraj Slavkovsky picks up a really empty calories assists on the empty net goal that sealed the game for Slovakia over Germany. I loved seeing Tim Stützle and his diving self on his way home. I quite honestly, like, I know we focus on it a lot. Tim Stützle was embarrassing in this game. Like falling and on the way down, looking at the referee to see if a call is coming. Like, some of the most, just have some self-respect, Timmy. Like, you're playing for your country in the Olympics, man. Come on. Anyway, we could go on about that.
The worst part is he doesn't need to do that. He's such a good player. He doesn't need to do any of that.
Correct.
It's so funny. What I want every Tim Stützle game after Brendan Gallagher retires is just to have a Brendan Gallagher cam in the corner. Like, all of Tim Stützle's shifts and him just being like, ugh, and like getting progressively more angry every time he flops. But like, not able to do anything about channel.
We just have to get Brendan Gallagher on Twitch to like live stream all of these things.
Yes.
I think that would be the best option. Look, we've said it on this show. Slovakia is going to go as far as two things. As far as their goaltending holds up, and Samuel Halavai has been phenomenal in this. He's an AHL goalie, for what it's worth, which is incredible. But also, as far as Juraj Slavkovsky can take them, they have a really tough matchup in this next section. They're playing the States. How do we, Andrew? I'll start with you. Like, if there's a way for Slovakia to beat the States, what is it? Like, how do they make this? How do they make this miracle happen?
Honestly, I think the only route is Juraj Slavkovsky bullies the Tkachuks. I think this is the way to get through the United States. I think you have to get them off their game because they have way more talent than Slovakia. Like, it's not even close. But the US team is not like impossible to beat. The goaltending is very tough. Like, they have the best goaltending overall in the tournament, but they haven't been insurmountable in this tournament either. So I really do think that you just have to get them emotional and playing outside of their game plan, and then you have a chance. And sometimes it's just about like sticking with them. Like Czechia today against Canada, they didn't really have like a very detailed game plan. They just hung around, and Lucas Dostal was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Laura, what about you? What are you thinking heading into this Slovakia-US matchup?
I also I think something similar, right? I think it does a large part of it is going to hinge on goaltending. But I also think that Team USA, with all of what they have, they don't have as much scoring as you would think, given the talent that they have in their roster. Like, they're an extremely deep team, right? Much more so than almost any other team in the tournament, other than I would argue Canada. But I feel like you capitalize on their inability to finish is what you do. You just have to be
You're
better.
feeling they're a little bit like light on like a Cole Caulfield, Jason Robertson type.
Something like
They're
that,
missing that.
maybe, yeah, maybe like an Adam Fox or a Lane Hudson, something like that as well.
Alex to
They
break
don't.
it. Why not?
Why not, right? So they don't have that. So I do think that this is either going to be the best game we've ever seen Juraj Slavkovsky play until such a time that he makes a Stanley Cup final, or they're going to focus all their energy on containing him, and they're going to win that way.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's my biggest fear, right? Is that I think Ruzicka has been great on that line. I think Tatar has struggled to play at a consistent level. I wonder if they go all of our eggs in one basket and they move Dalibor Dvorsky up to the top line. He's been phenomenal in this tournament. But there's two things I learned about the US from watching them play an actual contender for the first time in this tournament when they played Sweden on Wednesday. Their penalty kill is perfect. It's 10 for 10. But what I noticed was that they are willing to give you shots from areas that they are comfortable letting you have. And Sweden did not seem overly willing to take those chances. I think Slovakia is not going to be in a position where they can pass up those chances. I think they're going to be in a position where, they were allowing Sweden to shoot from the flanks on the power play, which I thought was very odd. They were saying, if you're going to beat us, it's from the outside. We're not letting you beat us from the slot. And I think, if you're Slovakia, maybe they changed their game plan for that, but that sounds like we're feeding Slavkovsky for more one-timers, which he hammered one earlier on in the tournament. He shot from there a bunch. He can also make crossing passes from there. So they have to respect him from that area as a dual threat. The other area that I noticed in this Sweden game was that Sweden was quite good, and it seemed like it was their mission to get the puck below the U.S. goal line and go to work. And I found that to be fascinating because, the U.S., they come across as wanting to be this big, tough, scary team. And on their blue line, they're not really that. Especially if you can get down low against a Quinn Hughes. If you can get down low against him, you might have a good chance. Sweden just wasn't able to get the puck off of the boards and get it to the center of the ice where someone could do something dangerous with it. That also sounds like Juraj Slavkovsky's music, does it not? That's his whole reason to be on whatever line he's on with the Canadiens, is I'm going to go in as the F1 or the, and work the puck along the boards and find somebody in a dangerous position to score. My worry with Slovakia is that the person who's going to be in that position to score is going to be Thomas Tatar. And I love that guy, but I just don't know that that's going to be, or can Pavel Regenda have another 2-goal game? I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing it, as fun as that was against Germany.
Yeah. I mean, Thomas Tatar, you like him. It's the same situation as his former line mates in Montreal, right? I really like Philip Deneau. I really like Brendan Gallagher. Would I want to depend on them right now in a winner-take-all situation? No, not offensively. Anyway, Deneau,
I was going to say, if I had the
defensively.
lead, yeah, tight.
Yeah, if you had the lead, yeah.
Yeah,
But
if I
otherwise,
have to get a goal late, which is the situation that Slovakia might find themselves in, that's going to be a challenge. Either way, so. This is a great chance. Even if Slovakia doesn't win this game against the States, it's a fantastic chance for Slovakia to medal still. If this goes chalk, right, and Canada and US are in the final, it'll be Finland and Slovakia at it again, just as they started the tournament, in a game that Slovakia immediately started the tournament with an upset. I don't know if they can pull that off again, but it will be really interesting to see. Any final thoughts on the tournament as it's gone so far? It's been incredible hockey, right? Like it's really great to have the NHLers back in this tournament.
Yeah, I was surprised at how many complaints there were about the dark boards, because compared to digital board ads, I'm loving this. Like, it's so much less disruptive, and I can even watch it with my kids because I can't watch NHL hockey with them, because every 3 seconds they're like, "Hey, why is it a Kit Kat on the boards? Why is that moving on the boards? What does that mean?" And I'm like, "Just be quiet, please."
Yeah. No, I get it. I do like I found that the Olympics as a whole are a very ad-free environment, which is a very unfortunate thing for me to say right as I'm about to segue into another ad read. But I'll leave that there. When we come back, Andrew wrote a piece for Eyes on the Prize. He did the research, and he's here to tell us that it's not your eyes deceiving you. The NHL officiating is a problem. We'll get into that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsor Jobs. Indeed, Sponsor Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all those boxes. When you reach the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right. I want to take everybody a peek behind the curtain. We were trying to think of how to open the show. And there was we could talk about officiating stinking, but like I was just like, we're living in the moment right now of Nick Suzuki, and we're basking in the glow of that incredible Olympic moment for our boy. I don't want to do that. But now is the harsh reality time where we have to be reminded that Chris Lee exists and that Eric Furlat exists, and he's at the Olympics. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. Andrew, you did a lot of research for Habs Eyes on the Prize. I think that you are the resident officiating truther among Habs fans. And not only that, you don't believe that these guys are, I guess, in the position to make the right call most of the time, but that you've done the research to back it up. Why don't you talk us through your project a little bit and explain what the reason for it was and what you found?
Yeah, so initially it was just a lot of Habs fans this year have been frustrated. And I think we've all seen it. It's felt like things are a little bit weird. Like the Canadiens just haven't been able to get breaks. And a lot of people focused on the game against the Edmonton Oilers early in the season, where they kind of got jobbed in the third period when they had the lead pretty secured. And the Oilers weren't playing that well. The Canadiens dogged them pretty good that game, but they ended up losing, I think, in overtime due to some power play goals at the end. And it didn't start at that game. It actually started before then. But there's a pattern in the calls that the Canadiens have dealt with that I don't want to say anything conspiratorial, because I think that that's always like a dangerous game and also like a bit of a bad way of like jumping to conclusions. But something is weird with Canadiens games. So what I decided to do was just manually track. This sounds so stupid because it's too much of a big project, but manually track every team in the NHL, starting with the Canadiens and their division, and then moving out to the East and then the West, and go through game by game and just write down all the penalties in spreadsheets, who drew it, who it was against or for, what time of the game it was in, whether it was in the first, second, or third period, and whether the teams were tied, trailing, or leading, and also whether or not it was a coincidental penalty. So I'm only looking at penalties that create power plays. So no misconducts, no fights. Those are taken out. And what I have found is that, number one, I think I have definitively proven with math that game management exists.
For sure.
The reason for that is tracking over half the league already. I can tell refs just officiate differently based on the score. For example, for the entire league that we've tracked so far, on average, and this is partially due to luck because of what teams have been tracked, but on average, when the games are tied, these teams have got 51.1% of the power plays, which is around even. When you're trailing, those teams have got 55.3% of the power plays, which nice little boost, right? You're trailing, get that game tied up. And when they are leading, only 44%. However, the Montreal Canadiens buck that trend because when they are tied, they earn a flat 50% of the power plays. So they're a little bit below average in how they draw penalties. And I think tied situations are about what you want to look for like true talent, right? That's when everything's equal. We're not, there's no game pressures applied there. So 50%, they're average, right? When they're trailing though, when usually teams get a boost, they only get 48% of the calls. And in fact, they're one of only 2 teams that have been tracked so far that get fewer than 50% of the calls while they're trailing. The other is, I think it might be the Columbus Blue Jackets. I don't know off the top of my head. I thought for a minute it was the Boston Bruins, but the games up to the Olympics, the Bruins got a ton of power plays when they were trailing, and they're now above 50% while trailing. But basically, almost every single team in the league benefits pretty significantly in power plays while they're trailing. The Canadiens get a worse situation than when they're tied, which makes no sense whatsoever. Now, they're not the only team whose power play differential goes down when they're trailing, but the other teams are teams like Ottawa that are one of the best power play drawing teams in the league. Like they don't take very many penalties either, which is weird because they're very similar.
They have been forever, by the way. Like the last 4 years, they've been like one of the best teams in the league at generating power plays. They lap the league. Like it's not close. Like we talk about Timmy diving all the time. Like it's impossible for me to not draw at least a dotted line between those two things.
100%. And I've also found that like the way that penalties get called as games progress, period by period, changes. So for example, in the first period, league wide, you're looking at about 11% of all calls are coincidental minors. In the second period, that goes up to 15.7%. In the third period, 20.6%. Now, on top of that, in the third period, power play calls also go down overall. Like per minute, there's just fewer power play calls. Now, part of that is because there's more coincidentals, like a higher proportion of them are coincidentals. Right. And I think there's just like, I'm going to call it cowardice because let's be real, it is. It's like not wanting to impact the game. And as soon as the game gets close to the end, refs are like, well, I'm not going to do anything that impacts the game. So there's always an excuse found to make things coincidental, or at least more often. I shouldn't say always. So there's that. But when you combine the tied, trailing, leading situation with the by periods, you find some very interesting information specifically for the Montreal Canadiens. So like by period across the league, there is no real variance to like the percentage of calls teams get, right? It doesn't make sense. It's all within around a 50% range because you're looking at the whole league. But the Canadiens have a very weird situation where in the third period, they only get 37% of the calls. It's the lowest of any team in the entire league by far. And that happens no matter whether they're tied, trailing, or leading. So this is a team that's about average in drawing or taking penalties when the game is tied. But yet anytime the game situation has changed and like there's higher leverage moments, they are getting absolutely dogged on, like constant. They cannot draw a call to save their lives, and they're getting a lot of power plays against them. Now, are they a team that just loses their minds as soon as it's in the third period and they can't do anything properly? I don't see that personally, because they're actually one of the better third teams in the league in terms of like engineering comebacks. So
sure.
I don't see that being the case. I think it's at this point, the next time that I write about it, it will probably be with the whole league up to the All-Star break tracked, or not the All-Star break, the Olympic break tracked. And I'm not going to really have, I don't think, a conclusion of why this is happening. I think it needs to be escalated to the league to say, like, you kind of need to justify this because it's so much like it's such a big outlier that I've got my wife, who's a scientist, now working on it and helping me graph things out to like display with like standard deviations and stuff, because it's wild. Like, I'll show you guys a chart after we're done. It's alarming how big of an outlier it is. I don't know why it's happening, but I think that the league owes some kind of explanation at this point.
Yeah, and a lot of people like to chalk it up to two instances where after the game the Canadians were upset with officiating. There was the one, obviously the Edmonton game, and then there was the Minnesota game, the second Minnesota game with a garbage penalty call against the Canadians, or that hurt the Canadians. The thing is that like people act like the Canadians are the only team in the league that does that after games, and in fact, like in playoff series, that's used as like a tool on the tool belt for head coaches. When their team is down in a series and they feel like the officiating isn't satisfactory, they come out after a game and they talk about officiating. And sure enough, the next game, they get more of those calls. I think the most important example of that in recent memory is the Blues in 2019 against the Bruins. They were getting Bruinsed, and then Craig Berube came out and said, "This is garbage." And sure enough, they started to get a bunch of calls, and they ended up coming back and winning the Stanley Cup. Like,
and the irony of that was they were like out Bruinsing the Bruins because that Blues team was insanely dirty.
Yeah, 1,000%. Like, you need to, I feel like you have to be the first one to use that bullet. Like, otherwise you're screwed. And like, I completely, like, the Blues were built to beat a team like Boston. And that's why, like, I think they were a little fed up. They were like, hey, what's going on? When Boston did this 8 years ago, it was really cool. What happened then? And then there's a whole thing in there about Colin Campbell and Gregory Campbell. But we don't need to go down that rabbit hole, but it's real. It stinks in general. Andrew, I want to end with one thing with you. You're commissioner for a day and you can make one change to the way NHL officiating is handled. What would you do?
Off-ice officials. This has been my thing that I've been screaming about for, Jesus, probably been a decade now. I think the game is too fast and there's just too much responsibility on officials. And I know that the NHL is desperately looking for ways to bring in more officials. I think they should bring in off-ice officials as a training and experience program first and foremost. You want to bring in a huge amount of refs into the NHL, start them out where half their games, they're off-ice. They're there. You've got one of these guys. The technology exists to talk to people with a microphone in your ear. It's existed for a very long time. They can do it in a hockey arena. Have the on-ice officials in communication with off-ice officials. There can be multiple on every game who have multiple angles and screens, and they can talk things out. They can say, hey, they could say, you missed a call here. Maybe you should call it. Or they could say, hey, this guy's getting away with things behind the play a bunch. Start keying in on him. Watch him because it's going to erupt out of frustration or whatever. You can put so much more into it by having more eyes on and giving the refs that are actually still working, who are supposedly the best in the world, a bit of support. And I know that there's probably some ego issues with refs where like they don't want to be overruled and stuff. And I think that's why you see sometimes refs not wanting to call an icing, or not an icing, sorry, an offside, or they call an offside too aggressively because they don't want to get reviewed on a ensuing goal and get overturned. But who cares, man? Like, stuff it. You make a fair amount of money. It's a really hard job. I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Physically incredibly taxing. They don't get to take shifts off.
They're skating miles every night.
Oh yeah. And their travel schedule is horrific. It's a horrible job for travel and physicality. And also like the injury potential is huge with pucks, sticks, players, but you got to actually do the job. And I think it's too much for them right now. It's the same problem in so many industries, right? Like, as much as I love to complain about how bad media coverage is today, it's mostly bad because you've got one person trying to do 6 jobs in every single media job.
No kidding. Yeah, you've converted me on the off-ice official. I used to not be a believer in it, but lately I have converted in that respect. And I also think if you have like 2 of them, right? Ref gets hurt in the middle of a game, you can send one of those guys down there. We're not back to the 80s of the one referee system, right? Like we can continue the high standard that the NHL purports itself to having. No, like it's really important data that you're collecting and conclusions that you're trying to reach. So we always encourage people go check out Andrew's work at Habs Eyes on the Prize. Let's cover our trivia in this episode, and then we'll allow Andrew to plug some stuff, and we'll let everyone get on with their day. So yesterday's question, as a reminder, for February, all of our trivia questions are in honor of Black History Month. So yesterday's question was: this French former NHLer just announced that this is his final Olympic Games. Andrew, do you know who this player is? So this French former NHLer just announced that this is his final Olympic Games.
I'm going to take a wild guess based on the few French NHLers that I know that are around retirement age, and I'm going to guess Pierre-Edouard Bellemare.
Correct. Yeah, he just announced that it's done. He says his body can keep up, but he says he owes it to his family. No more traveling, no more moving. You always got to respect that decision, right?
Yep.
A guy decides it's time because he wants to spend more time with his family. Yes, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare is our answer. It was given to us correctly by also Andrew, but Trinka Valkyrianes, Taylor McKnight, Mark Couturier, Joe Segredo, and Jay Schwarzer. So thank you guys for playing. There's no question today. It'll be back after the Olympics. Laura, I see you have something to say.
Didn't Valkyrie also get it?
Did I not read Valkyrie's name? I think I did. Valkyrie NS. If I didn't,
Yes.
You've now been mentioned a couple times, as you deserve, because you have always gotten the question correct.
I got you, Valkyrie.
Yeah, well, thank you. This is you know what that was, Laura? That was the eye in the sky referee. I missed the call and you corrected me on it. So thank you for that. Andrew, tell us where people can find you and the stuff that you're working on.
Well, you can always find me post-game after every Canadiens game on the Game Over Montreal channel. I also do some stuff on the Game Over Network channel once in a while when I have time. I've got a mini series podcast that's going to be dropping out next week with my partner, actually, where we're going to be talking about heated rivalry. We review it episode by episode, and that was really fun. So I encourage you to check that out. And also I write for Habs Eyes on the Prize. I try to do it as often as possible, but with this giant penalty project, I've spent more time in the spreadsheets than the word processor lately.
Yeah, as the resident math person on this show, your work is greatly appreciated. That's going to do it for us today on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for tuning in, making sure you subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcast to make sure you get all the latest episodes. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Canadiens ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedoncanadiens.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make your second listen NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL. You can find the show Locked On Canadiens everywhere we're posting things: Blue Sky, Instagram, and TikTok primarily. LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com is the best way to reach us. Hey, tomorrow we have a mailbag. We also, I believe, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we have a guest for this mailbag. And it is someone else you love from the Game Over Network. Kay, our buddy Kay will be joining us for the mailbag. Yeah, we are big believers in the Game Over Network. We love to have you guys on. So send in those questions, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. It's probably the best way to get those in. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you guys tomorrow.